it's pretty conservative, rural, ranchers, small town, a little bit of poverty, isolated, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, most Oregonians don't ever venture out east. Most of the population is along the five, from Portland down through Eugene, Medford, and all that. I meet so many Oregonians that have never even like really headed out east, other than everybody goes out to Bend, because Bend there's a lot of summer stuff, and there's skiing in the winter, and Bend's kind of a hot spot for vacation. But I mean, even Bend isn't really that far east. It's more like, I don't know, central.
Central,
But
yeah.
yeah, you head out like way east, and there's just tiny little towns, and yeah, it's a whole nother world out there. And then it's totally flat, as you may not know.
Yeah.
I don't know. The mountains are all in the kind of from the center to the west, more on the west side. So yeah, out there it's just flat. It's kind of no man's land. There's just little towns here and there. Not a whole lot going on. We went through there recently on a road trip, and there's some really crazy geography out there. It's not just flat, but it is a lot of just flat lands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are the people, they're pretty conservative, lots of farmers and ranchers and hunters and small town folk?
Oh, yeah,
That,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. In fact, that's kind of all of Oregon. So my wife and I ran a B&B for a while, and people would always be like, I thought Oregon was liberal. They'd come, to our place. They'd be like, I thought Oregon was liberal, but everywhere in your town, I see, Trump signs and guns and, and stuff. And I'd be like, no, actually, Oregon, the whole state is super conservative, but Portland is where all the population base is. So
yeah.
however, like Portland, Salem, and Eugene, if you ever look at our election map, it's like the whole state is red, and then there's like a couple little dots, but that's where all the population is. So we overwhelmingly vote liberal in the elections and stuff.
Yeah, I mean half the state's population's in the Portland metro area.
Right.
So it balances it out. Like, have you ever been to like, do you know anything about like LeGrand or Baker City or Burns, like the three biggest cities out there? Like, are they?
I've been to LeGrand. It's been a while, but yeah, I don't remember there being much there. It seemed like a lot of poverty out there. A lot of I remember when I headed east, like just seeing lots of trailers, and you don't see a lot of nice places and whatnot. Maybe in the cities, and like I said, it's been a while since I've been out there.
Mm-hmm. So LeGrand folks or people out there, just small town life,
Yeah.
farming, ranching, older people, maybe. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would guess. Yeah. Yeah, I would think it would be more of the elderly crowd. I know that's how most Oregon people are, is, most of the young people, as soon as they grow up, they get out of all those small towns. And even the town I'm from, Roseburg, it's, most people can't wait to get out of here.
Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah, Roseburg. Yeah. And we're actually pretty big for a little town. We're kind of the county seat. So we get a lot of, like I was talking to a cop the other day, and he was saying, so Roseburg's population is, where are we at? We're somewhere in the 25 to 30,000 people. But he was telling me, because I was like, it seems like it's more crowded than that. He said, yeah, during the day, because everybody comes from all the outlying areas, because Roseburg's kind of the hub, that during the day, we estimate that there's about 70,000 or 75,000 people here every day. So
yeah,
kind of a little town that turns into a big city every day.
So is there a way that you could say that the I-5 corridor, runs, all the way up to Portland? Are those folks different than the folks that you'd find on the coast or in Portland or on the east side of the state? Like, is there a way to like stereotype the communities right along the 5 on along the heart of like where the population is before you get to Portland?
Let's see. I'm trying to think about that. Of course, you get Eugene, where it's like, big college town. So you got that whole college crowd. So Eugene's like a whole different dynamic versus, a lot of the other cities. Eugene's like super diverse, lots of different types of people there. And then, but yeah, I would say most of the big cities from Eugene north, you're going to find a lot of more liberal folks, more probably, I don't know, people doing like more high end jobs and stuff in the cities. But even there, like anywhere you go, you're going to find we got a lot of redneck folk around here and a lot of farmers and whatnot. Pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to find that. Even in the big cities, they're there. You'll see feed stores and all this, and so.
So it's like a mix between like middle class families and like rednecks,
right?
Like, is it pretty much one of the like the eastern side? It's going to be pretty much all rednecks, but like
yeah,
seems like along the I-5 corridor, it's more families mixed in with like
yeah. You said it. It's a huge mix. You really get like all kinds, and it's kind of interesting, because it's like, yeah, it's a big, like I say, our town isn't even like, our town is somewhat conservative, but it's probably like 60-40. So it's like 50% conservative, but you still have a ton of, the Subaru lesbian type people and, just hips. We even get hipsters down here in Roseburg. I mean, nothing like Portland, of course, but that's kind of a thing here. You got all the guys with the funky mustaches and all this stuff. I mean, it's quite a mix here. I would say all along the 5, it's a pretty mixed bag.
Yeah, and it's not very like it's the state is very white. I know Portland's like the whitest big city in the country. Is it more diverse like racially along that I-5 corridor?
Oh, by far. Yeah. More than like if you head east. Yeah. If you head east, you're just going to see white folk.
Yeah.
Here it's like, I think Roseburg, we probably have like 3% minorities, something like that. I would guesstimate. I mean, I remember I grew up in this town. I came here when I was 5, and like, I can literally remember like the first time I saw somebody that wasn't white, and I was just like, what's that? What's going on? Because I was a pretty sheltered kid, and now you see a little more diversity coming in, but yeah, it's still like I say, Eugene is significantly more diverse, but even still, like I lived in Southern California for a while, and it's weird. I had like reverse culture shock when I came back here. I was gone for I think like 17, 18 years. When I came back, I was like, whoa, I forgot how many white people there are here.
Yeah,
it was pretty trippy.
Yeah. So Eugene's the most diverse city along that stretch then?
Oh yeah, I would say so. Maybe Portland is a bit diverse too, but I think Eugene gets a lot of the diversity just from the college kids coming in. U of O being a top sports school, we get a lot of, all the athletes and people coming in. So yeah, whenever I go to Eugene, you always see a lot more different types of folks, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. So is Roseburg, is that a pretty much like almost like an example of what all of that whole region is like? I mean, is it any different than any of those other cities along the I-5?
Yeah, I'd say Oregon is probably the most conservative of the towns along the I-5. Like it's not overwhelmingly, but we have a conservative sheriff and all that, and everybody knows the sheriff. He's a big deal around here because he's kind of, especially with COVID and all the mandates, like he's kind of real chill about it, and he's like, hey, we're just going to go around and educate people. We're not going to be going around shutting people down. And anyway, he's a big deal around here. Everybody loves him.
Yeah. So Medford and Ashland, are those also pretty conservative?
Ashland, no, it's kind of a artsy community, so it tends to be more liberal. You got like Shakespeare there, and so you got a lot of actors coming through, and Ashland is kind of like a whole world to itself. It's just a funky city. It's like somebody was telling me that there's like actually toplessness is allowed there, and a cousin of mine lives there, and I was asking people, I was like, do people actually do that? And he's like, yeah, there's a couple like hippie type ladies that'll ride their bikes topless. And so Ashland's, he's like, it's not the nudity you want to see type of thing.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
but he was saying like, yeah, that's but I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Ashland. It's kind of a little bit more like, a hippie type crowd. I think it's a mix though too. I know you do have some conservatives there, but it's more than like if you drop up to Medford or Grants Pass, way more conservative. In fact, I think Grants Pass I'd say is probably the most conservative city along the 5. That's where my folks live, and it just seems like a super conservative town.
So if I were to try to sum this up and I said from like the California border up to, let's say, south of Eugene would be pretty conservative except for Ashland. Would that be fair? And then as you get Eugene north, it gets more liberal as you get closer to Portland?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like Corvallis, Salem, Albany, are those like...
Yeah, those are, I would say, probably less liberal than, because Corvallis is kind of a farming community. There's a lot of farms around it. And, even Oregon State is they have a big agricultural program at their school. That's where my wife went to school. And she said there's a lot of agricultural stuff. So it's probably a little more conservative than Eugene, but it's, probably heading in that direction.
Mm-hmm. And like Salem?
Yeah, Salem is very liberal. Yeah, from what I've seen. Yeah. Okay.
So it's hit and miss, but it starts to get more liberal as you get more north. Then,
right.
That way I can like sum it up so that people can understand as easy as we can go. What about the coast? So like I keep hearing that like, the southern coast of Oregon is different than like the northern coast. In terms of like the types of people and the types of communities, like how would you describe that?
Yeah, I would say from what I know, like I'm not super familiar with the very southern. So we ran some bed and breakfasts in kind of the central Oregon coast, the town of Reedsport, Gardner. And I know it's different there than the northern Oregon coast. I kind of got a taste of it with COVID because I met this gal whose mom ran a B&B up in one of the northern Oregon coastal cities. I can't remember which one it was. Might have been Newport or something like that. And they locked everything down real tight, and they were like, no tourists, and they were like kicking people out of town and stuff. And then so we were starting to get worried, but the towns of Reedsport and Gardner, they didn't do anything. Our B&Bs were running the whole time through COVID. Nobody told us to shut anything down. Tourists were coming. Nobody was making a big fuss about it. So I was just surprised at how different it was. I mean, they were like on the news every night saying like, don't come here. And then down here, it's like, yeah, come, go to the coast, whatever, totally more laid back.
Yeah. So Southern Oregon is more conservative then in terms of is it like small towns, touristy towns? Is that what it what is it like down there mostly?
Yeah, the coastal area is all small touristy towns. Oregon doesn't really, none of our coastal towns are huge. They're not like big cities.
Right.
Some of them are like Newport is, I think, fairly large, but it's not, like when you go to California, they have major cities on the coast, and it's really not that way. Most of the Oregon coastal towns are pretty small communities.
Yeah. I've been to Coos Bay actually. I would say it was fairly decent sized place. I mean, it wasn't, huge, but
yeah, Coos Bay, North Bend, it's kind of really one city. In fact, it's like the weirdest spot because there's actually this one street you can drive in and you're in Coos Bay and you're driving straight down the street and it'll be like, welcome to North Bend. And you keep driving straight and then it's like, welcome to Coos Bay.
Yeah.
But their city lines are real wanky and like, it's just funny, but so it's really one city. They're all intertwined, and I think the two of those towns combined are about the same size as Roseburg. So I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 25,000 for those two towns.
Yeah. So the coast is cute, touristy, coastal towns, and like older people, like poor people. Like, how would you define Southern Oregon's coastal towns?
Well, Well, I don't know. From what I've seen, it's a pretty even mix. It reminds me kind of Roseburg. It's you got your old people and your young people, and they've got some community colleges over there, so there's a lot of young people going there. And it's a pretty even mix. A lot of the towns are pretty depressed, though. Like Reedsport, where we ran our bed and breakfast, it's a very depressed town. It used to be like an old logging town. They used to have a giant mill there, and so when that all went away, the whole town went like pretty depressed. I mean, there's a few nice neighborhoods like in Reedsport, and it's the same like in Coos Bay. Coos Bay is a little more affluent, but Reedsport had a couple nice areas, but most of the houses are pretty old, pretty run down. In fact, there was a house across the street that we'd have to warn people about, across from our bed and breakfast, that looked like it was about to collapse any minute.
Yeah.
Have, tarps on the roof and just crap all over the yard. That's pretty funny. But yeah, and then it was funny because people would come to our bed and breakfast from, like LA and New York, and they'd come from all over, and people would be like, oh, this town is just, they would say really disparaging things about the town. And I'm like, it's a poor town. You don't go to a poor town and be like, oh, it's not the Ritz-Carlton here. It was pretty funny. We would just laugh and be like, do a little research before you go somewhere. Like, you're going to a poor, backward town, and then you're upset because the town looks, poor and backwards.
Yeah. Is there a point along the coast that it gets less poor and a little bit more affluent as you get more north at all?
I'd say it just depends on the town. It's not necessarily north and south. I don't know. I've seen it's kind of a mix, because where you were saying you went, Coos Bay, that's south of Reedsport. That's definitely a nicer town, a little more affluent than Reedsport. But then, yeah, if you head north, Newport's pretty nice. But then, if you had actually in one of your videos you did, it was Lincoln City, and I was laughing about that because that's a pretty kind of ghetto town, and that's pretty far north. So yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a mix. It's less consistent than like the teams on the 5.
Yeah. So what are if you were going to pick 3 or 4 Oregon beach communities that are like the best, which ones do you think that you like the most, that aren't as depressed, that are nice and charming, that people might want to move to?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Well, Newport is really nice. I think Newport is probably one of the better ones, just because it's a bigger town too. So they've got some nice beaches, but then also there's a lot of shops and stuff to do there. Whereas like Reedsport, there's nothing there. It's like one of these little towns where the only thing open after 6 is the 7-Eleven and that type of thing. But so Newport's pretty nice. I'm trying to think what some other ones are. Brookings and Gold Beach both have like nice areas to them. They also have some not so nice stuff, but Gold Beach is a pretty popular spot because it's supposedly they get more sun there. I haven't ever really looked into it. That's what everybody says, that more sunny days in Gold Beach. And Brookings and Gold Beach, the convenience is they're right next to California too, so you can always run down to California. So I think those are both great spots to live. Brookings, Gold Beach. I'm trying to think. I had a friend that was I'm trying to remember what town they were in. It was north of Newport Beach. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but there's a nice, you can probably Google it real easy. They have a really nice
Bay?
No, they have a kite festival there every year. It's a really cute little touristy town. They have a big kite festival right on the beach, and it's pretty neat.
It's not Depot Bay. It says Lincoln City.
No, not Lincoln City. Maybe they probably do one there too. Wish I could think of it. I want to say, was it Seaside? Might have been Seaside. Anyway, or I think they might even do one in Newport. One area that I think is a pretty nice spot to live. One of my wife's favorite spots is Yachats, which I call Yak Hats because it's spelled like Yak Hats.
Yakhats?
Something like, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's they say Yahats, which I'm like, there's a K in there. It's Yak Hats. But anyway, that's a really nice spot. My wife, that's one of her favorite beaches, and you can go agate hunting on the beach and stuff, and that's real popular for the agates and stuff there.
What about Astoria?
Oh yeah, Astoria is a pretty cool town. It's got a lot of history there, which is pretty cool. A lot of like really old hotels and buildings, and yeah, that's a really neat place, Astoria. Famous because they've done a movie or two there.
Yeah, isn't that where they filmed Goonies? Is that?
Yeah, that was there. Yeah, but yeah, it's a neat town.
Okay, so Reed's. Let's see, Gold Beach and Brookings are pretty cool. Newport's a pretty cool town. And Yachats and Astoria, and then like Lincoln City's a beat up town on the coast. Is that?
Yeah.
What are a couple other bad beach towns that are pretty rough?
Let's see. What's pretty rough?
I guess just depressed and less good than the better ones.
Well, a lot of them, any of the ones that like are former like lumber towns, for example, like I was telling you, Reedsport and Gardner.
Yeah.
Gardner used to be kind of an affluent little town, and now it's just kind of, there's nothing there. There's like a couple art galleries, but there's like no businesses there anymore. And then Reedsport's like this town that's like it's like they keep trying to become a cool town, and like, I don't know, it's a struggle. It's a neat little town, but what they have is they have a Winchester Bay nearby, which is like a super popular beach to go to.
Yeah.
And I guess technically that's part of Reedsport. I believe that the zip code is actually the same as Reedsport, so I think it's actually, but some people call Winchester Bay its own town. But anyway, it's just outside of Reedsport, and they have like one of the biggest dune fests there. That's where they have like all the sand dunes, and just thousands of people come every year to this dune fest and ride the dunes.
Yeah. Is the Willamette Valley, am I saying it right? The Willamette Valley? Willamette. Okay. Is that along the 5? Is that what they call the Willamette Valley? Everything that's along the 5? Okay.
That's basically from Eugene kind of north.
Okay.
I think it's probably starts around I think basically it starts in Eugene and heads north. So when you're going up the 5, when you're traveling, all the way up till where you almost get to Eugene, it's all mountains, like Roseburg and everything south of here. When you're driving, you're going up and down mountains. The road's like this. Once you hit Eugene, it's almost a straight shot to Portland. At that point, it's real flat, and that's most of that I think is the Willamette Valley. You still go over a few hills and stuff, but it's a lot more pleasant to travel than Southern Oregon, because with all the mountains and the curves and stuff, and our weather's often pretty nasty. So yeah, I think that's about it's. I know that they call that whole area Eugene is the like Willamette. There's a Willamette River there and all that.
Yeah. And then like the gorge area, like Mount Hood and all that up there, like, are there any places up there that are worth talking about?
Oh yeah, Mount Hood is pretty awesome if you're, and the whole gorge, just like a lot of really cool towns along there. I'm trying to think. I had a friend that lived in a town. It was a tiny little town, just probably like 1,000 people or two, right on the gorge. But there's like everybody there has like spectacular views, which is cool because the gorge is like cut out of the mountains. So you got on both sides, on the Washington and Oregon side, you got all these places. So everybody has these glorious views of the gorge, and like a lot of cool, funky weather goes through there. And then it's a popular spot for windsurfers and all kinds of outdoor activities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just an awesome place. And then Mount Hood, there's like all kinds of great, like for mountain climbers and skiers, and that's just a beautiful spot. Yeah, a lot of really neat little touristy towns around that as well.
Mm-hmm. Is it mostly touristy? Like, what do people do for work that live in little small towns along the gorge? Like, are they retired? Do they work from home? Like, can they commute in?
Yeah, I think a lot of people commute to Portland because there's a lot of those communities within like an hour's drive of Portland.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do that. And then I think from my experience, it's a lot of retired people. I've had friends that had aunts and uncles and stuff that lived along the gorge, and they were all retired. Uh, just a great place to retire to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So yeah, a lot of neat. Oh, Hood River was the town my friend was at.
Yeah.
That's a really cute little town right along the gorge. And then of course you got the famous Multnomah Falls that are in that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I might have seen that. We stopped and looked at some falls once. Now that I remember, we did actually go to Mount Hood. I think we snowboarded there. We stayed at where they shot The Shining, or where it was based on, that hotel, that creepy hotel.
Yeah.
Up there. So Portland, how has Portland changed since, how long have you lived in Oregon?
So I've been here a total of probably about 25 years now.
Yeah.
Over 25.
How has Portland changed since you've been there? I mean, I keep hearing it used to be a really funky, weird place. It was awesome, and now it's getting like overcrowded, and like the culture's leaving, and like it's expensive now, and people are angry. I don't know. Like, how would you define like Portland then versus now?
Oh yeah, it's incredible. So when I was a kid, my parents used to go to these conferences in Portland, and I was probably like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. And this is how safe Portland was back in the day. This was in probably the early 90s, I would say, like 91, 92 in there. And so I was like 12, 13-year-old kid. My parents would just turn me loose on the town. They'd go to these conferences all day. I'd buy a little pass for the Metro Link. You could take all the buses and the subway. I would just roam the city like by myself all day, and they never worried about me. And it was just like, that's how safe of a big city it was. Sometimes I'd take a friend with me and we'd just be out roaming around all day. Now it's like, I wouldn't even want to go out in Portland. It's crazy. I mean, like, it's always something new to, like the latest thing, I don't know if you saw, is like, there's this crazy house where they declared another autonomous zone. They were trying to evict these people. I guess they hadn't paid their mortgage in like a couple of years. But then they're saying like, oh, it's racist, and they're putting up signs because the people are Black and indigenous. So they're, and all these people they actually had a bunch of people with guns come and like camp out, and they put up these barricades, and it basically shut down like a whole city block for weeks. And there's still stuff going on. I don't know. You can't even follow it because every day it changes. They're like, okay, now the barricades are down, but there's still a standoff, and I don't know. It's just a bizarre place. And then you've seen all the rioting and looting that's been going on through the pandemic, and it's really sad, and it is driving out like business owners, because I've seen so many business owners on the news that are like, I supported the cause, I supported it, I had like signs in my window saying I support this, and then they smashed in my windows and they stole my merchandise. And it's like, people are like confused because they're like, they want to support these movements, but then the people are just like crazy, and they go and so it's like, I think it's going to become a place where nobody's going to run a business, because it's like nobody's safe. You don't know when the mob is going to turn on you, even though you support the mob. So yeah, it's just a really bizarre place, and it used to be such an awesome place. I mean, my wife and I, when we were first married, this was like 9-10 years ago, we used to like to go there just to people watch, because there's just so many different types of people. I don't know if you've seen the show Portlandia, but it's like you see that show and you're like, yeah, that is so right on. Just so many like funky, crazy people. It's just awesome.
Yeah. So is it dangerous because homeless and street criminals and drug criminals and and like anarchist type people, is that pretty much the danger? I mean, there's not like shootings over like you would have in places like Philadelphia and Detroit and stuff, right? It's more like street crime, like assault.
I think like what you're saying is like in Detroit, there's a lot of like gang stuff, and I don't think that Portland really has like the dangerous gangs like that. It's just like anarchists and yeah, druggies. I mean, our state overall is being overrun by druggies. It's even in my little town. So outside of my little town, right along the freeway, there's this tent city, and it's getting bigger. Like just about every week, you're seeing it grow and grow, and it's bizarre. It's unlike it. You know, we've always had a few homeless people, but now it's like these major encampments. And then in Portland, from what I understand, it's way beyond that. It's just like massive cities of tents and homeless people. But yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe how much there's in my little town. It's like I don't know what they do here. They all camp out they're actually right along the 5. So if you're going through Roseburg, you just look and there's people on either side of the freeway, and I think what a horrible place to be homeless. It's just, we got pretty nasty weather oftentimes. What's funny too is I was commenting to my wife when we were going by the other day, and I was like, man, some of these people actually have like really nice, like high-end tents that they're camping in. I'm like, where are they getting these things? I'm like, we used to have this really nice tent that we used for like, we would do events at like selling stuff at like mud runs and stuff. And I bought like this really high end tent. It was like, I don't know, I want to say I spent $600 or $700 on it. Had, nice metal wall. And I was driving along. I was like, that guy's got the exact same tent I had. I was like, how's this guy getting like a $600-$700 tent?
Yeah. So are they camped along the 5, meaning like up on the freeway, up on the embankments, or you mean like in the communities right when you turn off, like on the off ramps and like under bridges and stuff?
Well, there's the big group I'm talking about. I mean, they're everywhere, but the big group, it's right off. So like the 5 freeways here, and then to the west of the freeway, there's some mountains. So they're just like on the bank heading up. So they're actually just like 20 feet off the freeway. You're just right there, like at the base of this mountain. And there's just like a long road. You're just driving, looking at them all. And it's like, seems like they're always adding more, that the city's getting like longer and longer, the tent city.
Yeah.
More and more people all the time.
Like all along the whole 5, all the way up to Portland, you'll see pockets of that?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. But it's mostly like just in the cities. So like the one in Roseburg is like, it's like right as you're getting into Roseburg.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think I haven't seen any in Eugene just off the freeway. I think they're more like in Eugene. I've seen them downtown. They'll actually just set up like a city block that doesn't have any buildings on it. Like it'll just be in a vacant lot. They'll just set up shop there on like vacant lots and stuff.
Yeah. So why is Oregon becoming a location, central gathering point for homeless druggies?
I think it's probably just the welfare programs and stuff that they're giving them. And I heard that like up north in Seattle, I know they give out tents. And I think there's got to be something like that going on here, because I'm like, I don't know where they're getting all their tents. Because I remember in years past, you never saw them in tents. It would be like they'd have like a tarp, strung up to the tree. And so I'm like, somehow they're getting tents. So, I think that there's probably some sort of government assistance helping them with that. But I know that there's a lot of, like, it's really easy to get government money. Like I know a guy that's actually, I won't go into too many details, but he's a relative of mine and he's homeless in California. Right. And that's just the lifestyle he's chosen. He wants to drink and be on the streets, and every once in a while he'll come up to visit us, and he's a California native, but he'll come here, and next thing we know, he's like popped into some government office and he's got a bunch of food stamps. And then next thing we know, the stamps are gone and he's got some booze. It's pretty funny. I'm like, it's so easy for him. Like he'll just pop in, and next thing you know, and I'm like, he's a California native or a California resident, but Oregon will just like, somehow he's getting stuff from Oregon too, whenever he comes here. So obviously it's like super easy to get stamps and welfare and all this. And it's crazy. And then I don't know if you've heard of this. This cracks me up. So there's a thing that people are doing like crazy. So our bottles have a 10-cent deposit on them here. So what tons of the homeless people do, they give them like, they'll give them like a flat of like a crate of bottles, and they'll take them to where they recycle, and they'll dump all the water out and turn in the cans just to get a couple bucks to go get some booze or some drugs or whatever. It's funny because you'll go to the can recycling place and you'll see a whole bunch of little lids all over the ground. You're like, yeah, I know what went down here, and it'll be all wet. I think that's why everyone's frustrated in Oregon, because it's like we feel like control is happening from this city way. I mean, Portland's right at the north tip, so we're like this city that's like the very edge of Oregon is controlling the whole state, and they don't really relate to the rest of us. And it's like we're little rural communities, so it's like they're making us shut down, and we're like we don't really have a big problem with COVID or anything. And so yeah, a lot of frustration. And yeah, we're planning to leave probably in April. Well, partly it depends when we sell this place, but it was crazy because we were able to buy a place cash in Kansas. I've never owned a house outright in my life,
Yeah.
And we sold our bed and breakfast, and we had enough to just like go ahead and buy it. And then we're hoping to sell this place soon, which I think will happen because it's just everything's getting bought up here right now. And it's strange. I'm like, why is everybody coming to Oregon? I have no idea. Bizarre.
So I heard that like almost every drug except heroin is like legal there. Is that true?
Yeah. They just, in our last election, they just legalized some sort of magic mushrooms. It's bizarre. And they're, the guys is like, oh, it's some, here's what's funny. When they were running ads for it, I didn't even realize what it was until my wife is a pharmacist. She was like, oh, that's magic mushrooms. Because they call it some funky name. And they're like, oh, we need to legalize this and they would have like veterans on there saying like, oh, this really improved my treatment for, PTSD or whatever. And it sounded like it was some new drug or something. And then she's like, oh, that's magic mushrooms is what that is.
Yeah.
I was like,
psilocybin.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people had no idea. They were just like, oh, it's some new treatment for, people with different conditions. And I think people had no idea. So it's like, yeah, they keep legalizing more and more stuff. And it's crazy. And, we already, since we legalized marijuana, there's already a pot shop on like every corner. I mean, they have like, there's ones with like drive ups and, it's like everywhere you go there. I don't even know how they can all make it. I'm like, is there that many people? Because like the moment they legalized it, they just popped up all over town. I mean, there'll be like one and then like a block down, there's another one. I'm like, how many can we possibly support?
Yeah, like dispensaries.
Yeah, dispensaries. Yeah.
So are there a lot of people? There's a lot of people moving to Oregon from California.
Right.
They're trying to get out of California, but it seems like they're turning Oregon into California, sort of. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah. I mean, there definitely is a ton of Californians coming here. In fact, two of our neighbors where we live are Californians. They're retired. But I think the majority of Californians that are coming are retired people because there's not a ton of jobs in Oregon. There just isn't. I mean, there's just not a lot of jobs. So I think most of the Californians that are coming are retired. And I think they're actually more conservative leaning.
Yeah.
It's not like the young people are coming with their radical ideas. It's like they're actually Californians that, all the Californians I've met, I think they're awesome people. And the ones that have moved up here and like I said, our neighbors are real phenomenal folks. And that whole it's funny because the stereotype is that Oregonians hate Californians. But I think that's kind of like not really an accurate stereotype. I know when I was a kid, I think that was more of a thing. And you used to actually see bumper stickers that would say like, welcome to Oregon, now go home.
Right.
And, but I don't know. I don't personally know anybody that's like, oh, those darn Californians, I mean, not that I've never heard it, but I always hear people saying, oh, Oregonians, you all hate Californians. And I'm like, I don't know, probably some of us do, but I don't think it's as widespread of a phenomenon as people want you to believe. And I think more Oregonians are from California than any other state.
More Oregonians are from California.
Yeah, I looked that up.
Okay, right. Yeah.
I mean, next to native Oregonians, like next to natives, the biggest amount of people have come from California more than anywhere else.
Yeah. So Portland's like there's 4 ways to divide Portland, like northeast and southwest and northwest and southeast or whatever they do with their like directions. It seems like a lot of from what I was trying to gather, it seems like a lot of the California people live on the west side of town Like is that
Nick, honestly, I'm not that familiar with like that aspect of Portland. I don't
okay?
really know.
Yeah, yeah. So Oregon's changing for the worst, you think, right? Like it's not like a conservative state that had values and logging and exploration, and it's more about progressive agendas now as it's getting bigger.
Yeah,
Is that true?
yeah, I would say that's 100% accurate.
Um, do people in Eastern Oregon give a shit about that, or they like stay out of the way? Like that might as well be another state. How do those people cope with the way the state's changing?
That's a good question. It's funny because it's almost like Eastern Oregon's a different state, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. It's like you never hear about them. Like out here, like nobody talks about Eastern Oregon. I follow a lot of politics and stuff, and it's like you never hear about anything going on over there. Um, like I don't know. It's almost like you ask anybody out here what's going on, and people can kind of everyone knows about Bend, like I was telling you before, but other than like Bend, Sun River, it's like nobody really knows what's going on out in Eastern Oregon.
Is Bend? I've heard a lot of good things about Bend. Is it liberal leaning, but like not over the top?
Yeah, that's probably about right. I think when I think of Bend, I don't even really think of like politics. I just think like everyone goes there because it's just there's so much like awesome outdoor stuff. You can ski all winter, and then there's whitewater rafting in the summer. It's like this vacation mecca, and the town is like growing so fast. It's like every time I go, there's like new stuff, and it's they can't even keep up with how many people are moving there. In fact, a buddy of mine that moved there from what I can't even remember what state he was. I think he was living in California for a while, but he moved out there basically to retire, and he loves it out there. It's just an awesome place. It's just due to the outdoor stuff. But you don't really Bend doesn't figure into the political aspect of Oregon much. You don't really hear about them a whole lot.
Would you say it's the best place to live in the state?
Yeah, if you're outdoorsy, yeah, I would say that's pretty much the place to go because they got everything. Everything you could want, they got there.
If I was a middle class home person like I am, if I was going to move to Oregon, where would you send me if I, you know, needed to be within a decent drive of a job, and I didn't want BS, and I, also didn't mind, I was kind of outdoorsy, but not over the top.
Yeah.
Like, where would be a couple communities that you think people would move?
Well, I think my town of Roseburg is by far the best. Um, you know, of course, we discussed all the problems that are pretty much everywhere in Oregon. But the problems aside, what I love about Roseburg, and this is why I live here, because we could pretty much live anywhere in Oregon, but what I love about Roseburg is it's it's still small enough where it has kind of a small town feel. If you live here very long, it's like if you go to the store, it's small enough where you're gonna see somebody it's not so small where it's like everybody, but it's like you go to a restaurant, you're gonna run into a friend. So it kind of has a small town vibe, and but then at the same time we have a lot of big city amenities. In fact, it's actually really really surprising because I've never seen a town of 20,000 people that has the amenities we've got. I mean, we've got Home Depot and Lowe's. We've got a Costco. I mean, have you ever seen a Costco in a town of 20,000? That's
Yeah.
like unheard of. And I think it's because we're the county hub, so like all the outlying towns are coming here. So I always tell people it's like you can get kind of a small town feel, but all the big city things that you would want, and we got some good restaurants here. I mean, obviously not the variety as we had in California. You can't beat that, but we still do have some pretty good, tasty places to eat. And then outdoors here, it's kind of like outdoors. I would say it's like a mini Bend. Like we do have rafting here, not like the extreme whitewater rafting, but we do have rafting and lots of fishing, and there's lakes nearby, and there's the famous North Umpqua Trail for hiking. I think the North Umpqua Trail joins up to that big what's the one called the hike that goes all the way to like border to border.
Oh, the Pacific Coast Trail,
Pacific Coast Trail.
Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah, they always call it PCP.
Yeah.
I think the North Umpqua Trail joins up to that at some point. But anyway, tons of hiking, and just the scenery here is gorgeous. So like I don't know. I think you can't do much better for like somebody like yourself. And prices are still somewhat reasonable now. Oregon overall, the real estate is going up, but you can still get an entry level, like a decent home in a decent area for probably just over 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
You can get something reasonable. Now, if you want something that's fairly nice, you're probably going to be looking at 250 to 300. But people on the lower income, like under 200, you can't get anything, which is kind of sad, because when I first moved here for 150, you could get something nice. But when I moved back, I should say, as an adult, used to be able to get decent places for 140, 150, and now it's like you got to have over 200.
Yeah.
And there are some jobs here, not a ton of jobs, but the timber industry is still fairly strong here in Roseburg. So a lot of jobs in the timber industry still.
But as a state, though, is lumber falling on hard times? I mean, that used to be. I hear that there's a lot of lumberjacks are out of work, and it used to be a lumber state, and now because of like environmental reasons or overlogging or for whatever reason, lumber is lost its way. Like there's not as much. A lot of former lumber towns that are closed down. Like, is that true?
Yeah, there are a lot of small towns, like I was mentioning earlier. Gardner and Reedsport used to be kind of lumber towns and aren't anymore. Um, but I don't know. There is still a ton of logging going on. I mean, we have so Roseburg Lumber is our big local company, and like one of their plants, it's like I was driving by it the other day and I just clocked it just out of curiosity. I can't remember it's over a mile long. Like this plant, it's huge, and
Yeah.
it's going day and night. They're just cranking out the logs. So I don't know. I mean, in this area, it's still a pretty big industry. But I do think in a lot of areas it's kind of waned. And then, with the economy too, when the '08 collapse happened, that kind of slowed things down for a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of timber going on. Yeah.
There's a few more stereotypes I want to just get your real quick feedback on.
Yeah.
So if I were to go to Portland, what percentage of people do you think would have skinny jeans on?
Skinny jeans. Oh man. Of the dudes, I'd say probably at least like 20, 25%, if not more. A lot of skinny jeans going on up there. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a low estimate. Maybe it should be more like 40%. I haven't been there in a while, actually. It's been a few years. Like I try to stay away nowadays because it's just craziness up there. And
yeah.
But yeah, the whole hipster culture is a pretty big thing up there. And like I said, it kind of bleeds in down to here. We got a lot of trendy little taverns and brew pubs and all that. And the skinny jeans are kind of a thing there.
Yeah. And then so cold beaches. The beaches are pretty chilly, right? Most of the year, water's cold. People wear hoodies, even into sort of as summer gets closer, people are still kind of wearing sweaters and bundled up at the beach. Is that
right?
Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, even in the summer, you'll get a lot of nice sunny days, but it's probably 50 degrees out, So it's like even in the summer, it's sunny, but it's windy and cold. So it's like you don't see a lot of people in swimsuits on the beach, maybe some little kids that are brave and want to freeze, but our water is like icy cold. So yeah, I think the Oregon coast is some of the most beautiful coastline I've seen in the world. I mean, we've got, everything from sand dunes to where it's crashing on the rocks, and it's beautiful, but you just go to look at it. It's not like California where you go to get in. I mean, you always have your crazy surfers with their full body things, and they're in there surfing. But yeah, the rest of us are with our hoodies and trying to keep